Well, when I spoke about the individuals who came from home, who accessed residential placements, and I talked about there being 1,525 over the last 18 months or so, the majority of those are people who are priority one. We did have some individuals who were priority twos that were able to access placements. I can provide you with that breakout.
Describe to me the difference between priority one and priority two, just so we understand.
Sure. Generally, individuals who are priority one are those at the highest level of need. So they are people who have been living at home with a caregiver, and something happens in the situation of that family or caregiver where they can no longer be supported at home, and they need to access a placement immediately.
And as compared to priority two?
Priority two are individuals who are interested in a residential placement, and there may be some situation where we need to plan for and begin to think about what placement will be right for that individual and help them to access it. But it's really the distinction between those who have an immediate need in priority one and those where we can work with them in priority two over a little bit of time. I will say, as I mentioned, that our transformation panel did ask us to relook at that prioritization and think about how we can plan a little bit better for those who are coming into our system who are interested in accessing a residential placement, and we will do so.
Well, that's good, because I don't see how in a priority one or an emergency placement situation you can take, and there's any sort of planning or person-centered considerations that go on. So we need to roll that back, so we're talking about level two placements, not level one in emergency. But you don't have to respond. I'm out of time.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Senator Kathy Marchione.
Thank you. Let me first ask a question about the Justice Center. Do they report to you? Do they report to your unit, to OPWDD?
I'm sorry, Senator, I didn't hear your question.
Let me first ask a question about the Justice Center. Do they report to you,
No.
OPWDD?
No, the Justice Center is an executive agency, and they report to the governor.
So it was the governor's decision not to have the Justice Center here with us today? So let me try to answer my own question, and with all due respect. A lot of frustration as I sit here. We sit here listening to a $15 increase in salary for fast food workers that we as the legislature had nothing to do with. And we have to sit here and listen to people who truly should be making more money, who are undervalued. And now, with that undervalue, all due respect, we sit here and you can't tell us how much it's going to be to increase the minimum wage, if in fact it does happen, to know how much this is going to be. We are the elected officials here. There's branches of government for a reason, and these public hearings are very important to us. And we sit here and we ask questions. No Justice Center. I can tell you horror stories that come from my district about the Justice Center and wonder whether we should fund the Justice Center at all if they can't even come here and answer our questions. There's serious questions that are happening in the OPWDD world. I mean, I had an incident in my own district where a gentleman was accused of sexual wrongdoing. Through the process and the time that it took, and he was innocent in the end, he lost his reputation, he lost his home. There's parameters being set for the Justice Center for a reason, and then for a while needed to be paid. I mean, it's just we need to be able to talk to these people, and these hearings are critically important for us to be able to do that. And to come and not know the minimum wage increase, what it's going to mean, how do we make decisions as supposedly, we hope, are the decision-making body who would have something to say about this. So one other thing that has come up, someone said this is a woman-based jobs. Do you have the percentage of how many women in comparison to men work in this field? Because if this is an undervalued field and it's a woman's field, we need to do something about this.
We do have that information, Senator, and I can provide it to you after this hearing.
The only way to do something about it is give more money, then you get more men.
Relative to the integrated workshops. They have a wonderful workshop. I sometimes wonder why the state jumps in and fixes something that's not broke. I have just watched them struggle, and they're still struggling. And as many have said, and I don't want to continue to repeat, but I mean, there are people there whose what they can do is fold 5 papers a day and put it in an envelope for a mailing. That's what they can do. That's their best. But they're there, and they're being productive. And it's very difficult to find a person who has a disability such as that, an integrated work setting. And pretty soon, I mean, if this $15 an hour hits, so many of people who have spoken with me, you're putting everyone out of business. They're just going to be put out of business. So I think we need to take these hearings seriously. I think we ask that people be prepared to answer questions that I can't imagine you wouldn't have thought would come up, or someone wouldn't have prepared for you if you really wanted to give us the response to that. And we need to have these answers in order for us to make rational and reasonable decisions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Assemblyman McDonald.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Almost done. And appreciate your perseverance. As you can tell, everybody has a little bit of frustration, and rightfully so, because it's a population we all care for. If we all had all the money in the world, we'd solve all our problems, hopefully. But a couple things. And I'm going to make a couple comments, and then I have a question at the end. Do not feel like you have to comment on the comments, but you can if you want to. You mentioned earlier on, I think Member Gunther brought this up about, as you know, most of our residential growth is kind of like in an apartment setting, which is a good way to do it. I know in my community of Cohoes in the region, we have many consumers that are living very productive and fruitful lives. And I had to intervene a couple months ago for one of the agencies that I work with. And your staff was very quick, very responsive. They actually solved the problem relatively quickly for government's time frame in regards to setting of the rates for the apartments. And I think you mentioned that we're working on a process. I would really continue that we need to really be as timely as possible in that aspect. Many of the programs are nonprofit agencies. They are struggling every step of the way, and the uncertainty of knowing what they're going to be paid is going to have an impact on the services that are going to affect our consumers. I know here we are, I was just talking to a couple the other day at a telethon, and we are February 2nd, February 3rd, and we don't know what the rates are for this year. Now, some people say, well, that's typical. We can't have that kind of typical anymore, in my estimation. I will echo the concerns about minimum wage, and it's interesting because in the last couple of days, between the minimum wage impact and family and medical leave, 2 items that I get it, I support it, I love the concepts. At the end of the day, it's about who's going to pay for it. I find it very troubling and concerning that there hasn't been something included in this budget process. I know that's not your responsibility. I'm hoping, we have a timeline coming up soon for some amendments. I'm hoping that there's going to be some discussion there, or at least some kind of leadership there. Otherwise, obviously, it's going to fall back to the legislature, which we will obviously be focused on, because as you've heard from all the voices here today, I can tell you that probably the only person so far that's profited is the Times Union, because I see so many ads with all of our nonprofit partners trying to find people to work. So there's jobs out there. And, they deserve to be paid $15 an hour and more than maybe some other fields. So I'm hoping that we find a solution in that aspect, because it really concerns me, because I've been in the homes. I've worked with this population for 35 years now. I know what they go through. It's not easy by any stretch of the imagination, and we need great quality people to stay there, not to leave. So my question actually is kind of unrelated, is in regards to the staffing budget for OPWDD. I see a reduction of 255 people budgeted. And, being here in the state capitol, Times Union reports everything that goes on, and one of the things that's always troubling to me is to see that OPWDD and I think it's corrections are usually running neck and neck for overtime each year. So it says these positions are through natural attrition. Are they natural attrition in the administrative capacity or in the direct care capacity?
So what is happening? First, no staff are going to be losing their jobs as a result of this. But what happens is a couple of things. First, as people are leaving developmental centers and moving to community opportunities, the staff that are working in those developmental centers are then assigned to vacancies in that area. So something that might have been filled otherwise will be filled by a staff member that was working at the developmental center. We also have a couple of instances where we, for operational reasons, review our operations and may decide to change auspice from state to not-for-profit. We have a couple of limited instances of that in this year's budget. And when that happens, those staff will then transition to vacancies in the community. So that's why you see that overall reduction.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Senator.
Oh, I'm sorry, Senator Fred Askar.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. My question is about individual residential alternatives. It's been brought to my attention that OPWDD has closed a number of the state-operated IRAs over the last 2 years. Can you tell me why this action was taken?
Sure. As I referenced, we as a provider of services are always evaluating our operations, and in some limited circumstances, we may choose to change auspice from state to not-for-profit provided. We've done it over the years for a variety of reasons. Sometimes we have staffing concerns. Sometimes there may be certification or quality concerns. So in those instances where you have seen a closure or transition of state-operated capacity, that's what's happened.
When this happens, is there public notice?
We first start when this happens with discussions with the family members and individuals living there. Of course, we speak with our staff and help them to access other employment opportunities in that immediate area in our system. But we do also have a communication policy. We alert certainly our legislators when that's going to happen and where that's happening, as well as our union representatives.
So is it ever a matter of a cost-saving measure?
We really only do it for pure operational reasons. And as I referenced, it's situations where, for example, we are having trouble staffing a particular residence, and there is a not-for-profit operating in that area that we think could come in and do that, or where we may have quality of care or other concerns. It is relatively rare, but we do it, and it really is for operational reasons.
So then are you reinvesting those monies back into the community?
We are.
Are there any more plans to close any more IRAs moving forward?
In this year's budget, we do have a number of intermediate care facilities, actually, which is another type of our residential facilities that we anticipate transitioning from state to not-for-profit hospice. There are about 12 of them this year. But again, we really do it on an ongoing evaluation basis for what is our operational need and what are the resources that we have available in a given community.
And one last thing, I'm troubled somewhat by the shift of care for the developmentally disabled from your agency to what appears to be the Department of Health. Do you share in my concern? It seems there's going to be a $1.2 billion expenditure by DOH. You feel like your voice is being taken away?
Actually, in recent years, while rate-setting responsibilities for the Medicaid program, as I referenced, have transitioned to the Department of Health, OPWDD maintains program oversight, monitoring, and policy development responsibility, so we continue to be a strong voice in doing that.
Do you feel as though you're losing any of your voice?
I do not. I feel that we continue to provide the role that we have in offering and overseeing services for families and individuals who need them.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Assembly.
Assemblyman Crouch. Yes. Good afternoon, Commissioner. In reference to the workshops, you mentioned that you're providing guidance for some of these organizations to transition. Is there a definite plan for that? Is there one size fits all type of a plan?
No, and in fact, we worked with all of our workshop providers in developing the guidance because we really do want to make it workable. We have 2 different potential pathways for providers to come into compliance, and we'll be working with each of our providers to help them best accomplish and develop their transition plan. So it's definitely not one size fits all. It takes into account the many unique factors of that provider and the community where that workshop is located.
Is there how would you define it as an integrated setting? Is it a 1-to-1 ratio or 1-to-5 as far as,
No, we look at a couple of different factors. Certainly we look at how many people with developmental disabilities are working in that setting, but we also look at things like the efforts that the provider is making to try to ensure that people working there have access to the broader community, can access community resources, businesses and establishments, just like anyone else would in their workplace. So we look at a number of different factors.
You talked about, my understanding, the door is closed to any new incoming people accessing the services of the workshop. Is that still a closed door?
A number of years ago, we ended admissions to sheltered workshops. Now that we have finalized the guidance with our providers, as soon as providers come forward to us with a plan for how they can become integrated, those settings can have new individuals enrolled in receiving services there.
Do you have a number of individuals that are sitting at home waiting for services or training through the workshops? If you've had a closed door for a number of years, as you say, there must be a few of them backlogged, I would think.
We have a number of individuals over the course of the last several years that have enrolled in our Pathways to Employment program, which is a new service that we started a couple of years ago to help people be able to do job exploration, develop employment skills, and ultimately some of those people will begin receiving services at these integrated employment settings. So everyone who has come to our front door with employment as a goal has either gone to a supported employment service, a pathway to employment service, another training program, an internship, or other programs that are designed to really help them get ready for employment.
CIT in Norwich, when that was first constructed, the operational plan was basically, in my understanding, there was 4 or 5 houses, and anybody that came into that CIT, they were started off in House A, and they learned that there was merits for good behavior and consequences or of some sort. You didn't get a chance to watch TV or whatever it was for bad behavior, and as you learn some of that, you transition to House B and so on in House C. If you messed up with bad behavior, bad decisions, you went back to House A and started that process. My understanding now that no longer exists, and since the change in program, there's been a number of employees that were basically injured. Some of the control, or if you will, or management, it's a better term, management of some of the people that are there has fallen down, so the employee injuries are up. And of course, there's always, now we've got the Justice Center, there's complaints to the Justice Center that by these people, so there's a lot of people out on administrative leave. Can you comment on that?
Well, first, I'm happy to look into, and will look into, the concerns that you've raised about Valley Ridge, and certainly we can set up a time to talk with you about them. We do hear of concerns related to the length of time that people are on leave for investigations. It's something we are concerned with and are working very actively with the Justice Center to try to resolve, including, as I mentioned, through use of a recent lean project that's really designed to cut down the time frame for those investigations.
Quickly, in regard to the bed capacity, we mentioned, I talked to you about this once before when we met back in December. Bed capacity in the southern tier as a result of depopulation of Broome Developmental Center. Are you aware of a waiting list at this point in time, a number of people that are looking for residential opportunities in community homes?
We do in your community work with a number of families, and we're working with a number now to access opportunities in that area. We're also, as you know, working with many individuals who are in our institutional settings in accessing community placements, and where we need additional capacity there, we are building it and have done so.
You've got a plan for increasing the capacity at this point in time. What's your time frame for that?
We do. As we move closer towards the closure of our Broome Developmental Center, we have about 30 residents who are remaining there, and we are working with those individuals and their families on plans for providing their services in the community. And of course, we will have those opportunities up and ready before they transition into the community.
Just last question. As we've depopulated the Broome Developmental Center, my understanding that these individuals that were housed there, they had pretty much free reign if they were capable and so forth. They had art activities. You know, they ate lunch together. They saw a lot of their friends, and it was a very social occasion, engaging in different conversations or fun activities, art activities. And now these people are out in community homes. They only relate to 6 or 8 people in that community home. What's the plan for getting them to a point where socialization with some of their friends, or being able to go to the pool or whatever? It seems like that's just all kind of a mismatch at this point in time.
Well, actually, before any person leaves a developmental center setting, we require that there be a plan in place both for their residential and day support needs. And part of that really has to take into account what are that person's interests and goals, and how is the provider going to meet those goals that that person has set for their life. So things like what types of recreational activities they want to participate in, what types of social networks do they want to have, do they want to be employed, are things that we require the provider to come forward with a plan for meeting as we develop that plan for community living. So we really do try to make sure that each individual has a plan in place that will ensure that they have access to the opportunities they would like.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. We're finished on our side.
We're finished, I believe, on our side. So thank you so much, Acting Commissioner, for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next is Arlene Gonzalez Sanchez, New York State Office of Alcoholism and Sustained Abuse Services. Substance abuse. I used to speak English.
Thank you.
I didn't get the last one. 00446. Right. I'll call you back in a couple of minutes. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Senator Young, Assembly Member Farrell, Senator Amador, Assembly Member Rosenthal, and distinguished members of the Senate and Assembly committees. My name is Arlene Gonzalez Sanchez. I'm the Commissioner of the New York State Office of Alcoholism and Substance Abuse Services. I want to begin by thanking you for your support of our mission at OASIS and for giving me the opportunity to present Governor Cuomo's 2016-2017 executive budget as it pertains to OASIS. As you know, OASIS oversees one of the nation's largest addiction services systems that includes approximately 1,500 programs and assists nearly 100,000 New Yorkers on any given day. As Commissioner of OASIS, I have the privilege of visiting and talking with New Yorkers of all ages, races, and ethnicities from throughout the state about their needs when it comes to drug, alcohol, and gambling prevention, when it comes to treatment and recovery services. I have heard concerns from parents, grandparents, and individuals. As a mother and a fellow New Yorker, it pains me to hear stories of loss that are associated with addiction. However, every day I am also inspired to continue our agency's important work when I hear amazing stories of hope and recovery. We are working every day to make sure that more New Yorkers have those stories of hope and recovery to tell. The governor's executive budget proposes $616.9 million that will allow OASIS to move forward on our key priorities. Those priorities include expansion of treatment beds and opioid treatment programs, as well as expansion of prevention and recovery services, peer and family supports, housing for individuals and families, and continuing the Combat Heroin Education campaign. This proposal supports OASIS' ability to respond to needs identified by our constituents throughout the state, including expansion of treatment capacity with 24 beds for adolescents and young adults in Long Island, 24 beds for youth in Staten Island, 25 beds for youth in Niagara County, 18 beds for women in Broome County, and new detox services in the North Country. Furthermore, the budget includes Medicaid rate enhancement for treatment providers as they transition to managed care. It also includes funding for expansion of opioid treatment programs by nearly 2,000 slots from Buffalo to Watertown to Peekskill. The budget also supports the creation of on-call peer support program for emergency room departments and development of our Family Support Navigator program. We're also able to establish 7 new adolescent clubhouses and 6 new community-based recovery outreach centers, and will open 170 new New York 3 beds units. In addition, just this morning, Governor Cuomo announced in a press release the launching of a new database on our OASIS website to assist New Yorkers with identifying available treatment beds anywhere in the state in real time. The budget will also allow us to create a medication-assisted treatment pilot program using Vivitrol, which is a proven addiction medicine, together with counseling for opioid-dependent parolees as they leave Edgecombe Correctional Facility. It will also allow the purchase of handheld devices that can instantly analyze unknown substances for the presence of synthetics and other drugs. We will continue our Combat Heroin Awareness campaign and training of New Yorkers on the use of Narcan. So to conclude, Governor Cuomo's 2016-2017 executive budget enables us to further reinforce our treatment system, boost our statewide prevention efforts, and strengthen our recovery programs so that all New Yorkers have access to the system of care that they deserve. We look forward to your continued partnership as we advance these priorities. Thank you for your time today.
You believe it.